Well, good afternoon, everyone. We've all been inspired by the heroism of the Ukrainian people and their extraordinary president. It seems to me they have clearly accomplished more unity in Eastern Europe than any previous administration of either party has been able to achieve. Just look at what's happened over the weekend. Germany doubled its defense budget for the year and is going to commit to meeting its pledge of 2% of GDP on defense. Presidents of both parties have been trying to get the Germans to do something like this for a very, very long time. Switzerland, which I believe actually sat out World War II, seems to be putting aside its intent to stay out of every conflict and get in this on the right side. Sweden and Finland, two countries that have never belonged to NATO, are thinking about joining, and I think we ought to sign them up tomorrow if they're ready to join. In the wake of that, we're working on an omnibus appropriation bill here, and we've hit a snag that you should ask the other side about when they come out. They're willing to ask for a supplemental for non-defense diplomacy and that sort of thing. But on the defense part of the supplemental, they want to take that out of the top line we've already agreed to on defense, which includes parity between defense and non-defense. We're not going to do that. This is an emergency. It's eligible for a supplemental, and defense ought to be treated just like non-defense in the supplemental.
Well, obviously we're all going to get a chance to hear from the President tonight, but over the past year, the Democrats here in Congress and the administration have pursued a reckless and partisan agenda, and the American people obviously are seeing the effects of that and paying the price for it. You got inflation that is a result of the rampant spending by Democrats, the worst inflation in 40 years, hitting the pocketbooks of every single American. You've got the worst border crisis literally in history, more attempted illegal crossings than any time we've seen in history. And neither the President nor the Vice President has found time to go visit our southern border. The withdrawal from Afghanistan, we all know, was a disaster. We have rampant crime in a lot of our cities across this country, largely as a result of this so-called defund the police movement that has captured the Democrat agenda across the country and here in Washington. And I would hope that in the State of the Union speech tonight that what the President does is pivots toward an agenda away from this partisan agenda and toward doing things that we can work together on for the good of the American people. These are serious times. The leader talked about what's happening in Ukraine right now. We need to do everything we can to support the Ukrainian people, and supplemental spending bill is in the works, of course, with the important point that Senator McConnell just made about the Democrats wanting to rob defense top line for defense spending for Ukraine and treat humanitarian assistance as an emergency supplemental. Don't understand that at all. But the one thing I can tell you is that one area where we can really help the effort in Ukraine, help Americans in their pocketbooks, and help Europe and other countries around the world is to get America's energy production off the bench and back in the game. We have ample energy resources in this country, which this administration has placed off limits, and as a consequence of that, we have gas prices, hitting the new records here in the United States, and the United States going hat in hand to OPEC and other countries around the world to help fuel the energy demand that we have in this country. Completely unnecessary and uncalled for, and every energy dollar that the West pays helps fund Putin's war. So we need to get away from this dependence upon foreign sources of energy, Russian, OPEC, wherever. Assert America's energy independence, become an energy exporter again, and allow these countries around the world that are dependent upon Russia for their energy needs to turn to the United States. That can happen. All it takes is a change in the policies from those that this administration has employed so far that have hurt America's energy independence and force us to depend upon other places around the world, including Russia.
All Americans are inspired by the stubborn courage and heroic patriotism of the people of Ukraine. And I expect the President to mention that tonight in the State of the Union. What he won't mention, however, is how his policies from day one have enabled, emboldened Vladimir Putin to do what he has done. Vladimir Putin's economy and war machine is funded by Russian energy. And for a full year, Joe Biden has done everything he can possibly do to undermine American energy security and the use of American energy. That's what we've seen from this administration. This has only strengthened Putin as he has tightened the grip on the world supply of energy as Joe Biden continues to be a corrupt creature of the climate elitists. It's as if Vladimir Putin were Joe Biden's Secretary of Energy when you take a look at what sort of things Biden has done with energy. Killed the Keystone XL pipeline. Put a moratorium in place on oil and gas exploration in public lands. Went after Alaskan energy. And at the same time, what did he do for Putin? He approved Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and he went hat in hand and asked Putin to produce more energy and sell it to America. As of last night on the White House website, it is still there, where the White House is asking OPEC Plus, and the plus is Putin, to supply more energy to America. We're now using more energy from Russia than we are from Alaska in the United States. This has been a jackpot for Putin, and the American people have paid the price. And we're paying $1 more a gallon for gasoline than we were when he became president. Oil and gas is Putin's bread and butter. And what the President of the United States has done over the full year is embolden and enrich Putin and hurt the United States. And to show you just how bizarre this whole thing is that as the Russian troops encircled Ukraine, John Kerry, the former Secretary of State and the climate envoy, said he was hoping that what was happening in Ukraine would not be a distraction, he said, from their climate agenda. This is delusional to think of that as a distraction from his climate agenda. So here we are. Just last week, Biden's people at FERC killed pipelines that we need to move liquefied natural gas. People are paying a lot at the pump, and people in Ukraine are paying with their lives for these policies. I'm going to the floor after this with the unanimous consent agreement so we can expedite the movement of liquefied natural gas to export it to our friends and our allies overseas. Tomorrow, every Republican on the Energy Committee will be sending a letter to the President of the United States outlining 10 specific things he could do to help lower prices for energy in the United States, to help undermine Vladimir Putin, and to help the people of Ukraine. We have the energy in the ground in the United States. The Biden administration will not let us get it out. We are much better and stronger as a nation if we are selling energy to our friends than if we are forced to buy it from our enemies. It's a lesson that President Biden still has failed to learn.
Well, the President tonight with the State of the Union comes to talk about the State of the Union really after his first year of service as President. And as he does that, these are the kinds of headlines that have been out there for the last several days now. Soaring prices strain family budgets. With approval plummeting, Biden tries to dodge blame. Gas prices poised to hit $4 per gallon. and that one may be an old headline by now. Experts, pandemic closures taking a toll on students. In that article, a significant group of students lost 12 months of educational advancement in the last 12 months. And every group of students lost some growth in educational advancement in the last 12 months, but some students lost 12 months in the last 12 months. And that's only a suggestion of the kinds of things the president really has to deal with as he thinks about the State of the Union. The State of the Union is not good. The president's approval numbers begin to plunge after the disaster in Afghanistan. We have been working to reassemble friends and allies since then. As others have said today, nobody has done a better job of calling attention to the fact that the world is a dangerous place, and particularly a dangerous place without the leadership of the United States if bad things begin to happen.
I was a young woman when I attended an agricultural exchange in Ukraine, and that was 1989. The Ukraine was still part of the Soviet Union. And it was very evident in 1989 that Ukrainians wanted to be a free people. That is still true today. Ukrainians want to be a free people. We have all watched the terror unfold on our television sets, with Ukrainians being indiscriminately killed by Russian soldiers as they're standing in the path of their tanks and their vehicles. We see the bombing that's going on in Ukrainian cities. We are in horror here in the United States, and the American people want to do more to support Ukrainians. You would think that we would be working on numerous bills in the United States Senate to help support the people of Ukraine. And yet, what is Chuck Schumer focused on this week? An abortion on demand bill, a postal reform bill. Not bills that will address the needs of the American energy sector, nor the needs of our Ukrainian friends and partners. So there are things that we can do right now, today, working on bills that will put further sanctions on Vladimir Putin and the Russians, especially on their energy sector. We can provide additional lethal aid to the Ukrainian forces and their militia that are fighting to defend their homeland. We should be unleashing American energy independence. These are all things that we can do right now, today. But instead, we're working on abortion on demand and postal reform. We have got to step up and do better. And the Democrats need to clear the way and allow us to regain leadership around the world and support our Ukrainian friends.
Our heart goes out to the people of Ukraine. We're all inspired by President Zelensky and the heroism of the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian people. We hope none of this ever happens in our country. We need a president that's going to show up. He needs to do everything he can to hold Putin, the thugs around him, the economy of Russia accountable. We've got to do every sanction we can do. We've got to do everything to cripple their economy. Every dime that goes to Russia helps Putin. So all of us can do our part. There shouldn't be a lobbyist in this country that does any work to help the Russian government or any thug out of Russia or Russian businesses. All of us, we can stop buying their products. Retailers can stop selling their products. And then what Congress can do, we can go and make sure that Ukraine has all the resources they can to defend themselves. So I hope all of us do our part to do everything we can to hold Putin accountable and make sure the Ukrainian citizens keep their independence.
Leader McConnell, can I ask
Chris.
you about Senator Rick Scott? He's introduced an agenda that Democrats have seized on, includes tax increases. It's been very controversial. I wonder what your thoughts on this are.
Well, Senator Scott is behind me, and he can address the issue of his particular measure. If we're fortunate enough to have the majority next year, I'll be the majority leader. I'll decide in consultation with my members what to put on the floor. And let me tell you what would not be a part of our agenda. We will not have as part of our agenda a bill that raises taxes on half of the American people and sunsets Social Security and Medicare within 5 years. That will not be part of a Republican Senate majority agenda. We will focus instead on what the American people are concerned about: inflation, energy, defense, the border, and crime.
Leader
Chad.
McConnell, thank you. We've heard a lot of harsh rhetoric here about Joe Biden. When we have this international crisis, I realize you don't like how he has been handling this and have ideas about how he should be handling this. But with such harsh rhetoric, is that fair and is that right for the United States amid an international crisis when the president is coming to deliver a State of the Union to really drill down on the president the way some Republicans have the past couple of days on this issue?
Well, look, I mean, I think there's broad support for the president and what he's doing now. Our biggest complaint is what took him so long. Much of this might have deterred the aggression in advance. But yes, we're all together behind the Ukrainian people. We're thrilled at the changes that have occurred in NATO. And I think I've seen our country pretty unified. And as a matter of fact, the whole world seems to be unified. I mean, who would have thought we'd see demonstrations in the streets of Russian cities? That takes some courage as well.
Leader McConnell. Leader McConnell, you've long been critical of President Vladimir Putin. Was it a mistake for the former president to praise Putin as very savvy, smart, and his Ukraine strategy is genius?
What President Putin is a ruthless thug who's just invaded another sovereign country and killed thousands of innocent people. That's what President Putin is.